Hey guys, Spudknocker here, as always, and today we're going to take a look at strafing in the F-14B Tomcat. Now you may be thinking to yourself, Spud, why in the world do I need a strafing video for the F-14? I've shot up more trucks than I can even count in the AV-8B Harrier and F-18C Hornet. But just like many other topics in the F-14, things are very similar but extraordinarily different in the F-14 compared to other modern aircraft modules in DCS. This is mostly due to the fact that the F-14's older avionics induce its own quirks and workarounds that we need to use in order to get the job done. And in this instance, it's also due to the fact that the M61A1 Vulcan cannon in the F-14 and F-18 are set up very differently, and for very different purposes. In the late 1970s, when McDonnell Douglas and Northrop were developing the F-18 Hornet, they were developing two different aircraft based on the same aerodynamic airframe, the F-18A and the A-18A, with their corresponding two-seat training versions, the TF-18A and TA-18A. So there's some alphabet soup for you. Now in the F-18A, the incidence of the gun in the nose was pulled up roughly 20 degrees in order to pull a nice lead on enemy aircraft in a turning dogfight. However, in the A-18A, the gun was depressed a few degrees below the waterline of the aircraft in order to facilitate the easy strafing of ground targets. Now, in the early 1980s, as computer technology and avionics technology progressed, the F-18A and the A-18A could be combined into one aircraft that we know today as the F-A-18. Now this led to a compromise being needed for the incidence of the gun, and it was settled on roughly a 15-degree nose-up incidence for the gun of the F-A-18 to facilitate both the tracking of enemy aircraft in a dogfight as well as being still able to perform the strafing duties of a ground attack aircraft. However, in the F-14 Tomcat, she is a pure air-to-air beast, an air-to-air interceptor built to kill enemy aircraft with a ground attack ability basically deleted early on in its life. However, late in its life, like we are flying now in mid-2006, we need to be able to employ our gun in the air-to-ground arena accurately and with as much lethality as possible. In modern warfare, especially in urban warfare, the gun, the M61A1 Vulcan cannon, is a very potent weapon for military aviators to engage in close air support with friendly ground troops in a densely packed urban area where casualties of innocent civilians must be kept to a minimum due to the very small footprint of the 20mm round compared to, say, a 500-pound bomb being dropped in an area, whether it's laser-guided or GPS-guided, or larger bombs. So, as a result, we need to know how to employ the primarily air-to-air based F-14's gun in the air-to-ground arena. Because it has such a high incidence of being aimed up above the nose waterline of the aircraft, as you can see in this picture here, it requires us to use a steeper dive on the target and kind of pre-plan our strafing run passes a bit more than you would in the whiz-bang computer-controlled F-18. So, with that story out of the way, why don't we go ahead and set up our cockpit here and get ready for some strafing runs. So we'll turn on some lights, shed a little light on the subject for us. Our carrier has been relieved as a combat carrier in the NAG, or Northern Arabian Gulf, and is steaming south towards Dubai for a port call. And as we steam south, we're going to go ahead and use this time to practice our air-to-ground gunnery. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell Jester to bring our TACAN back to the Stennis. The Stennis is dragging roughly 1 nautical mile behind it a towed target for us to strafe and drop practice bombs on. Now because of this, we need to get good air-to-ground gunnery training in, but we also need to make sure that we are keeping both the ship, its assets, and its personnel safe as we train. So we're going to avoid flying at the carrier as we fire our gun to make sure that any overshoot does not hit the carrier. And she should be just off to our left. There she is. She's at a course of 072. And why don't we go ahead and pull up the lantern pod and take a look. Now it should be noted that in the mid-1990s, even before the F-14 officially was given the lantern targeting pod by the Navy, F-14 Tomcat crews using civilian handheld GPS receivers consistently beat F-18 crews in scoring for accuracy in both air-to-ground gunnery and air-to-ground bombing skills. Now many experts believe this is due to the fact that the F-14 has a much larger mass to it, and so in firing the Vulcan cannon, there's much less vibration in the mounting of the cannon itself, allowing for a much smaller spread of bullets coming out of the gun. Similarly, for bombs, the F-14 drops its bombs out of its tunnel into very clean, nice air. Whereas in the F-18, some people believe that the bombs being dropped off the wings go into rather dirty, turbulent air from vortices off the Lexes, as well as turbulence off of the leading edge of the wings. So, take that information as you may, but it helps to explain why the F-14 scored as it did, and why F-14 crews could consistently beat F-18 crews. So, we obviously know where the carrier is, so we'll go ahead and put this guy away. We'll go into air-to-ground mode as we set up for our air-to-ground strafing passes. One thing to note here on the F-14 HUD, the HUD is not a primary flight instrument. So a lot of this pitch ladder stuff and heading tape and whatnot, we just really don't need it. And in strafing in the Tomcat, it really gets in the way and doesn't allow you to see what you need to see. So as a result of that, especially when I strafe, I go ahead and hit the declutter button down here, and it takes away all of that pitch ladder, heading tape, all that stuff, and leaves us with the the weapon select indicator, a altitude tape, as well as a gun cross and flight director. If we need the heading ladder or heading tape or anything like, pitch ladder or heading tape down here, we can just look down at our VDI. So we can see the carrier down there, as well as its target, being towed roughly 1 nautical mile behind the target, as well as a plane guard SH-60 down there. So we've got our gun selected, and we'll go ahead and tell Jester to select our BDU-33 practice bombs, just so that those are ready for later. And why don't we go ahead and arm up the jet. Alright, so we're going to take care to go into our strafing run while not flying directly over the carrier in order to make sure that we don't endanger the carrier from any overshoots or undershoots. Trying as best as we can to come at from a forward aspect on the moving target. If you're strafing a moving target, you always want to come at it from the front rather than from the rear, as it allows you to get a better bead on the target and judge the lead you need much better, as well as reducing the lead you would need as much as possible. So our Arc-9 is getting false returns off the very reflective water. You should not have that happen to you on a ground target. Let's see, was that good lead? Pretty good. Put out some flares there for effect for the airshow for our crew down on the fantail of the ship who are probably watching us, as well as practicing to keep in good habits for any potential man pads in a target area we may have just pulled off from. Another thing to note in the F-14, and it's a good habit to get into as it doesn't necessarily affect the F-110 engined F-14s as much as the TF-30 engined F-14s, is making sure that you do not fire your gun while on idle. If you fire your gun while your throttles are on idle, with the TF-30s you have a very high likelihood of starving the engines of the oxygen they need and causing a compressor stall, particularly in the port side engine, as it's on the same side as where the gases from the gun will be ejected out the side of the aircraft. And as we come down into the target, we're going to keep on using our gun cross up here as our main flight director instrument for our dive, as that is where our gun is really bore-sighted. And as we continue on down towards the target, our gun cross from our CCIP indication will keep on climbing up the ladder up to that gun cross. Alright, so we're coming out, diving in on that target again. Getting a couple false CCIP returns from the very reflective water down there. Alrighty, here we go. Coming up with a lead. And got some good hits on the target down there. So we'll come on up. Stay in the good habit of popping some flares as we come on out. Make sure we don't throw her into afterburner to make ourselves a nice big target. As you can see, I'm not following the cardinal rule of always coming in from a different heading and never on a reciprocal due to the fact that we cannot overfly the carrier either on the ingress or the egress from the strafing run due to the fact that we could endanger the carrier. We can also see that we do have the gun rate on low, which is the air-to-ground setting. Allows us to conserve our ammunition a bit, as well as expelling a less amount of gas out the port side of the aircraft and potentially endangering our port engine less. So we'll build up a little separation here. And if you listen closely, you can hear that I haven't been in idle for either of these strafing runs that I've done. Very, very important thing to remember, because if you kill your port side engine on your way into a target area, you're going to be very unhappy, and it might just ruin your day. So we can see just how steep of an angle the F-14 requires for a very accurate and good strafing run. As you can see, that CCIP indication crawl right on up the HUD to our gun cross indicator at the top. So you can see as early in the strafing run here, I'm kind of ignoring the CCIP indication until it gets much closer to the gun cross. Those looked like some good hits again. Perfect. The F-14 is just one of those jets that just requires a lot of hands-on practice to get everything down the right way, and that's why little practice missions like this are definitely worth their while. And being as realistic as possible with a towed target behind the carrier is just a lot of fun too. We're coming around back to our target area here. Making sure we don't endanger Mother. While still getting in some good training on engaging targets with our gun. And there's a nice steep dive. Pull a little bit too much lead that time. But it works. If that were a ground vehicle that wasn't immortal like this little patrol boat I have for my target behind the carrier here, I think we would have gotten him with that shot. So we'll bring it on back around. Looks like we're getting about 1 pass per 100 rounds from our gun. So we've got probably about 2 passes left. And you can really see why having the HUD decluttered really helps when strafing in the F-14. You can see I'm not really even paying attention to the CCIP indicator until it's just right underneath the gun cross. There we go. And it is definitely true to say that the F-14 engaged in most of its combat in its service to the U.S. Navy at the very tail end of its life in the air-to-ground role. So I know a lot of people in the F-14 flying the jet in DCS have the opinion of not a pound for air-to-ground, but the F-14 sure is a potent strike, forward air controller, airborne, and close air support platform. This is also a very good exercise for just controlling the F-14 as precisely as possible and employing the F-14 very well. And due to this kind of quirky nature of the very high incidence of the gun, it's one of the more difficult maneuvers and combat employment of the Tomcat there is. And as you can see there, we are always making sure that we do not have the engines at idle when we pull the trigger. Even if we know we need to slow down, it's much better to be too fast in your strafing run than it is to accidentally stall an engine. So while I don't know if Heatblur is going to model the fact that firing the gun on an idle can starve your port engine in the F-14A, it's still a good thing to be in good habits and fly the aircraft as realistically as possible. Beautiful day here in the Persian Gulf. Definitely a fun way to end this stint of combat flying in the F-14 as we head down to Dubai for some partying. Flying in the beautiful blue sky and firing some guns at a target behind the boat. Wait for that CCIP cross to come on up to the gun bore sight cross, much as possible. Ooh, that's going to be a good hit. Yeehaw! Looks like we probably got one more pass. Not sure how many rounds we have left. Under 100, obviously. And in real life, F-14s did use their guns quite a bit in combat, both in Afghanistan and Iraq at the end of her service life. Alrighty, we'll bring her on around for one more strafing run. Let's try and make this one the best one yet. Guns to idle, but we're gonna... Sorry, engines to idle, but we're gonna push them back up. Nice steep dive angle. And that's all she wrote. Ah, darn it. Too much lead. From the shrapnel from high explosive incendiary rounds like we're carrying now, I believe we probably would have damaged a real truck on a road pretty darn badly. Or at least scared the hell out of the bad guys inside of it. Alrighty, so time to switch to our BDU-33s for some practice dropping on that same target. So in summary on the gun, you want to make sure you get a nice steep dive angle for using that very high aspect gun on the F-14. You make sure that your engines are not in idle so you don't accidentally cause a compressor stall in your port side engine. You also want to make sure as you're diving in on your target, you wait for the CCIP indication to climb up towards your gun cross, and then use your gun cross as your flight instrument to get you in the right spot, while using the CCIP cross as kind of your windage and lead computing site. So it definitely looks different than in the F-18 Hornet, and it definitely requires a bit more pre-planning and pre-thinking about how you're engaging in your strafing runs and passes. And make sure that you've got that guy in declutter on. As you saw in the screenshots earlier, you saw that having the declutter off in a strafing run really makes it kind of confusing to look at the HUD in the F-14. So make sure you got that guy turned on, and you're good to go. So thanks a lot, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you did like it, please like and subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. And if you would, please consider donating to my channel on Patreon. All donations go right back to my channel for making awesome DCS content and fun missions to fly together on the Wingman Finder Discord. So, thanks a lot guys, fly safe, and happy hunting.